Hi guys, before we start, I have to show you a proper glass of Grodziskie, just poured. And welcome everybody. It's our pleasure to host you here for EBCU workshop. We are going together with Marcin Ostajewski, who is a head brewer for original Grodziskie brewery. So the most advanced person here probably for Grodziskie. We are going to show you some facts about Grodziskie, some history, some details about the style and how we promote it and how it's developing on the market. And let me start with our presentation. Okay, so as you can see, we are going to talk about Grodziskie. This is the right pronunciation. Grodziskie, piwo grodziskie, so Grodziskie beer. It's probably one or maybe the only original Polish style beer, and it's a very old style. So we are going to start first with the history of the beer. As you can see, it's a kind of old photo, the first slide, which shows the kind of advertisement of Grodziskie, but it started a long time before this. So, what is the Grodziskie beer? Just from the very bottom line, because it's very often kind of misunderstood. So the Grodziskie beer is a low gravity, highly carbonated, light-bodied beer, which is an ale, which is combining an oak smoked. It's very important, oak smoked, not other smokiness flavor, to the clear bitterness, and it should be very much present in the beer. So the beer has to be evident on bitterness, and it's highly sessionable, so it can be drank glass by glass, especially during the hot season. And what is the most important? It's never sour. So it's not like a Lichtenheiner. It's not a sour beer. So how about the history of Grodziskie? So it's a very old tradition. So historically, it started in the 14th century, but the first evidence of this beer is more like 15th century. So we have written evidence about brewing in Grodziskie city, and Grodziskie city used to be a very beer part of Poland. So it was not only about one brewery, but also in the medieval times or some ages ago, there used to be a lot of breweries in the city. So we are talking about, of course, small breweries brewing Grodziskie beer in one city. So in 18th century, they started to export the beer to Brandenburg, Prussia, Silesia, or Hanseatic League cities. So it was quite well known across the Europe, and it was perceived to be a quality beer. A little bit more about Polish history, which was kind of difficult. So in 18th century, we were partitioned by 3 countries. So the most important piece of information is that Grodzisk city was located then in the Prussian partition. So it was under German administration. So that's why we can meet not only a name of Grodziskie beer, but also you can find this name more in a German way, like Grätzer, but the original name is Grodziskie. So in the 19th century, in 1870, the rail line to Frankfurt was open, and then they just extended it to Grodzisk, and this fact was very important because it let the brewery export more beer into the Western countries. In 1921, the stakeholders of 5 different breweries set up a United Grodziskie Breweries, Zjednoczone Browary Grodziskie, which was a kind of, today we could say beer holding or beer corporation, but it was a kind of collaboration between the biggest breweries in Grodzisk, just set up to extend their business and to make the product more visible in other countries. So it was exported to 37 countries, including Germany, United States, Australia, China, Philippines, even some kind of African countries. And also during the Second World War, the beer was so good that the Germans exported this beer to Africa Corps, just to ship it to the German army, because during the Second World War, Grodzisk was, of course, under German occupation. And on this slide, you can see probably the most important person for Grodziskie Brewery, Antoni Thum, who was Polish but originated from Austria, so his father was Austrian or German, depending how we treat him. But he migrated to Poland, and he just developed the brewery for one of the biggest brewery in Poland. So, as I said previously, he was responsible for the success of Grodziskie Brewery. So the annual production of the brewery, and you can see here how it looks like nowadays. So the annual production of the brewery in the beginning of the 19th century was 5,000 hectoliters per year. But the end of 19th century, it was 100,000 hectoliters. So a lot of beer for those times. And in 1950, after the Second World War, it was only 9 hectoliters. 1979, 15, and nowadays it's something around 20,000. So we have never got back to the times of 19th century where the brewery was so huge. Oh, and of course, some advertisement, old advertisement and posters of Grodziskie. And as you can see, it's also translated to German, but the original one is in Polish. And the Grodziskie was said to be a kind of noble beer, beer good for the health. So from this postcard, you can translate it for you that the sportsmen are drinking Grodziskie beer. So, but if we say about Grodziskie that this is not very, the alcohol content is not very high, you will know that it can be a good drink even for the health, because normally it's like 2.7 up to 3% of alcohol. And some more posters, advertisement. In the middle, you got the Grodziskie Piwobranie poster, which is a kind of event festival every year to celebrate Grodziskie beer. Oh, and this is a nice photo because 2 of us are here. It's a photo from Grodzisk competition judging. This is the only competition on the world which is dedicated to Grodziskie beer, and it's for the homebrewers. So homebrewers send the beer in 2 categories. The first category is original Grodziskie, and the second category is variation around Grodziskie. So Grodziskie with some additives, different approaches, and so on. So in 2006, this homebrew competition has started. And in 2010, there was a first new Grodziskie in Poland, because after the communism time, Grodzisk brewery had stopped production, and for some years there was no Grodziskie on the market at all. Okay, how about Grodziskie now? It's developing quite well. So the first milestone to resurrect Grodziskie in Poland was Grodziskie Redivivus. It was a special document, special piece of information gathered by the Polish Homebrewing Association to collect information about Grodziskie beer. And you can see it, it's also in English, so there is a receipt, all the information needed about Grodziskie. And it started the popularization of Grodziskie in Poland. And the next step was a reactivation of the brewery in Grodzisk, so the brewery which Marcin works for. And it was in 2015. And also Grodziskie Piwobranie, which is the festival of Grodziskie beer. And then we had a Grodziskie Konkurs Piwobrany, which is a Grodziskie homebrew competition. And the fest started also in 2015. But one of the most important milestone for the kind of internationalization of the beer was listing the Grodziskie style in the BJCP style guideline, which also happened in 2015. So how about the commercial examples? There are a lot of commercial examples of Grodziskie nowadays. Also, of course, there is a Grodzisk brewery original one, which is this one, and also we have regular batches from Pinta brewery, Trzech Kumpli brewery. So the Pinta brewery will be this one. If you want to take a look at this, and the Trzech Kumpli, which is probably one of the not many canned Grodziskie, very good one. Nowsko, Nepomucen, these are all the Polish breweries. And of course, once a year, there is a winner of the Grodzisk homebrew competition. And it's a variation on the Grodziskie beer, always different beer with different additives or different approach. And this year, this is a Grodziskie beer with smoked plum. So, of course, there are different other examples, like special Grodziskie in a British style brewery pub, which is served from the pump, or Grodziskie made on a original recipe from before the from communism time, and of course with original yeast blend. Marcin will tell you more about the recipe and what kind of ingredients we use to brew Grodziskie. And if we talk about variation of Grodziskie, there are so many very different strands, like dark Grodziskie or wild Grodziskie or Christmas Grodziskie, or even Grodziskie with bacon or pink pepper or grilled lemon or lapsang tea. So there is a big variety of Grodziskie on the market. And of course, this is not only about Poland. So if we talk about Grodziskie, Grodziskie became quite well-known beer style on the market around the world. So started from Europe, from Czech Republic in 2010, then the Netherlands, Italy, United States. It's a good market for Grodziskie, Canada, and even this year in Brazil, we were judging with Marcin together in the competition called Concurso Brasileiro de Cervejas. And out of 3,625 beers, Grodziskie won the best of show. This is the second biggest commercial beer or craft beer competition on the world. And you can imagine how it was shocking when Brazilian Grodziskie won such a big competition. And of course, I always try to show some statistics on Grodziskie. It's not so easy because there is no official statistics. But as you can see, started from 2012, where we had only one Grodziskie on the market, on the Polish market. We moved to 8, 13, and so on. But 2010 was a real Grodziskie year because we had 16 beers on the Polish market, but this is not the end. 2022 is even better because till now we've got 31 beers, 31 Grodziskie on the market, and it's still growing. For the other countries, these are the statistics from Untapped, and you can see what are the most popular countries for Grodziskie brewing. The first place is not Poland, it's the United States. And until 2021, we had 50 beers on the market. What is the most visible here is that Grodziskie from the United States, it's not only like the original one, not very alcoholic. It's more strong because average ABV in Poland is 3.41. And for the United States, it's 4.22. But original Grodziskie should be something around 3%. And also the Canada is quite popular for the Grodziskie, the Netherlands and some other countries. But this statistics doesn't cover this year. So probably the situation is much more better now. And here you can see how the Grodziskie beer should be properly poured. So this is the dedicated glass. It's a very important thing. So Grodziskie has got its own glass. It's very fizzy, it's very carbonated because we call it in Poland Polish champagne. We don't have our own champagne. We are not very much wine country, but this is a Polish champagne, very carbonated, nice head and dedicated glass. Now it's a Marcin turn. So we are going to talk about ingredients and all the brewing connected topics. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. As Brett mentioned in his email before we met, probably we will not get so much in depth into the details of brewing ingredients and water corrections and whatever, because if you also have some questions about the details, we can get back to it in the Q&A session. But first of all, the water that was originally used, taken out from 2 wells in the brewery that we built back, was always very hard, and it's of course very good for let's say strengthening the impact of hops. That's why Grodziskie as a style is quite bitter, but still on the other hand, the bitterness is kind of paired with very subtle, not very intense, but very subtle smokiness. Maybe some of you noticed when we showed you the old commercials of Grodziskie, One interesting fact is, because of course we have different approaches and different experience with smokiness in Poland and in Germany. None of the Polish commercials ever stated that Grodziskie is smoked. It was just natural, subtle note in the background. But on the other hand, the German commercials of the beer always stated that it's smoked, just because of Germans more used to using smoke, of course, not oak smoke in their beers, especially in Bamberg area. So it was more natural for them to call the beer smoked. For Polish consumers, not very much. So all the Polish commercials that we have in our archive do not state smokiness at all. Also, to accentuate the bitterness, the water is not only hard, the water is also quite rich in sulfates. And of course, the high residual alkalinity of the water needs some softening with acid, but as I told you before, we will not get so much into the details right now to fit in time given. Okay, so we can move to the other slide. Okay, thank you. The grist composition of Grodziskie was slightly different over time. As for now, we got back to all wheat, 100% smoke wheat malt bill. But as you can see, during the years, it changed to different mixtures of barley and wheat, and even for some time for all barley. The malt that we use now is made in Bruntal in Czech Republic, because they were the only maltster that agreed to do traditional floor malted wheat and dry it over oak wood fire, because all the others probable suppliers of malt do only smoking of the malt which is already dried. So the perception of the smoke that you get, it's slightly different, because the smoke doesn't penetrate the grain during drying, but only, let's say, covers the grain on the outside. That's why we do it in Bruntal. But of course, Bruntal is also quite open to selling the malt, and we are open, of course, to selling the malt for other brewers, because we know it's kind of difficult to get the malt done the right way. Okay, move. Other ingredients, hops. Of course, traditionally, low alpha local Polish hops were used, especially Tomyski or Nowotomyski variety. The name comes from the name of the city, which was close to Grodzisk, and the city was known to have hop farmers near the German border. But since those farms were destroyed shortly after the beginning of Second World War, it was moved, almost whole hop farming industry moved to Lubelski voivodeship. So over the years, it was for a long time forgotten that Tomyski variety was used. It has slightly different aroma profile than Lubelski or Żates. Those two are similar, but luckily, with the help of let's say the only Polish hop farming company investing in resurrection of old hops or developing new varieties, so Polish hops, led by Paweł Piłat, with the help of them, because of course there were some rhizomes stored in Institute of Farming and Polish plant varieties. So he resurrected this variety for us, and now his plantation of Tomyski is big enough to offer this variety not only for Grodzisk brewery but also to others. In terms of dosage, two things that are quite important. One thing was that, like in brewing of traditional lambics, old hops or aged hops were used to lower the bittering potential, and that was because you can add more hops, which are particularly oxidized, but still, even if the alpha dose is lower, you still get the beta acids, which are also preventing the microbes to grow. So you can add more hops to prevent the spoilage by bacteria, and you still maintain the level of bitterness which is in style. Okay, we can move. It's kind of funny to do it remotely. Okay, fermentation. Grodziskie is, of course, a top fermenting style, but historically, it was not so easy because two strains were used. One of the strain made quick main fermentation. The other one was used mostly for bottle conditioning, but because they flocculated differently, a mix of yeast propagated separately in-house at the brewery was used. But of course, back then, especially in the communist times, let's say the control of the process was not so perfect. So let's say that in the bottle, you could find either a slight amount of yeast or quite a big dose. And of course, some problems with overcarbonation also occurred. That's why historically, especially when you talk to elder people who remember the old Grodziskie during communist times, it was some kind of lottery. Either the beer was great and highly carbonated, either it was slightly too high to open the beer safely. Historically, isinglass was used for clarification. But when we rebuilt the brewery, of course, in the beginning, to do it just as in the original recipe, we imported some isinglass from UK. But after a few approaches, we saw that just because we have the ability to centrifuge the beer, and of course add the fresh amount of yeast, calculating the amount of cells very precisely, we don't need to use isinglass or gelatin or any other findings, and the beer is clear enough after the process. So it's totally safe to skip the isinglass use. Of course, the other thing was that isinglass since 2015 over the next years was more and more hard and expensive to import and get it to Poland. Maybe at this time, I will also say something about the current setup in the brewery, because among the companies that worked within the city in the historical times, none of the brewers had all the equipment needed to brew and bottle the beer. They made collabs even before it was cool, because most of the brewers had brew house fermentation or only fermentation because they bought wort transported from other brewery, because it was all close to each other, and only one brewery at Kolejowa Street had the bottling line. So all the brewers moved their beer to this one brewery owning a bottling line. And currently, because the Grodzisk brewery was rebuilt thanks to Fortuna Brewery, because I'm head brewer in both, we do it quite similar way, but we transport it to Fortuna Brewery to bottle it. So the only difference is the distance is slightly bigger. around 60 kilometers. But still, the building that we rebuilt does the same part of the process that it was before. So brewing, fermentation, of course, in open vats, as it was before. And most of the maturation time is also done in Grodzisk. Then it's being transported by cistern to the filling line. Okay, we can move to the next slide. Just short, at least part of them, brewing tips, especially for the homebrewers. To avoid protein haze, since the original recipe, we do it without changes now. We do quite long additional rest at 38 degrees to prehydrate the grist. The rest is even up to 45 minutes. Then we move to another long standard protein rest at 52, which is up to half an hour. And we use rice husks to aid the filtration process, especially with our filtration tun, which is quite big in terms of diameter, and when you compare it to the load of the wort, not of the wort, to the mass of the mash that you transfer to it, it's even slightly too big in diameter. So without the rice husk, is very difficult to form a proper filtration layer. Historically, in the brewery, hay was used, but still some of the bacteria that form spores, when you filtrate using hay, caused problems, especially some lactic acid infection of beers. For the fermentation, if you do not have access to the original Grodziskie strain, all the neutral top fermenting strains and starting at lowest possible temperature of the strain given is the safest way. And at the end of the fermentation, we usually raise the temperature a few degrees more to remove the diacetyl and to have some pearl-like esters, which are within the style, because even though the style is mostly described as slightly smoky with some hints of hops, but not too much of them, also some pearl-like esters are acceptable for the style. As I mentioned before, low alpha hops give you the stability of the beer thanks to the beta acids that are still even within the old hops. Of course, they cause some problems because you need to monitor the bitterness levels and frequently test not even the alpha, but also the changes in aroma. Because even if you use those aged hops on the bittering on the hot side, you can still have some off flavors in the beer if the hops are too old and have too much of those cheesy oxidated aromas. And of course, for aroma hops at Whirlpool and also slight dry hopping, Tomyski, Lubelski, and Saaz varieties are the way to go. Okay. About the malt, as I told you before, you can get Grodziskie malt made to the actual recipe in Bruntal, but of course the standard batch is 25 tons, and they do even malt wheat only once a year, especially for us. But if someone needs Grodziskie malt, we can also offer you the malt, and especially if you are on the other side of the pond, Live Oak Brewery, the guys also love Grodziskie as a style and brew a great Grodziskie. Once a time, they import quite reasonable amounts of Grodziskie malt, so they also offer it to other brewers in the US. We also we just have one rule. We slightly laugh about it because we know that Grodziskie is not a very easy style for the big beers. But we just ask Bruntel to inform us about any new buyer to avoid buying the malt by the biggest companies in the world, which is probably not coming very fast. But of course, we hope that someday it will be a popular star. Okay.
I don't know if we said it loud enough, but original Grodziskie and Grodziskie from Grodzisk is always bottle condition. So this is a difference between the other examples of the Grodziskie, maybe besides one brewer in Poland, because the rest of the Grodziskie are not bottle condition. Yeah, and it makes it different.
Yeah, this is on the last part, probably. Yes.
There is.
Yeah. I mentioned about the fermentation here because okay, it's mainly some tips, especially for the homebrewers, because I know especially when we judge this Grodziskie homebrewing competition, just because the effect of dry hopping, especially when you do slightly more dry hop Grodziskie, so the hop creep is visible, and you still add quite a lot of sugar to maintain the desired carbon dioxide in bottles. The overcarbonation of homemade Grodziskie and maybe few years ago in commercial made Grodziskies is quite common. Also because of the amount of sediment that you get in the bottom of the bottle. So when you have more of yeast and hops sediment, even slightly overcarbonated beer can gush very easily upon opening. Okay, that's probably the last slide, and I see that we have some questions. Yes, Eric, Weyermann offers oat smoke with malts. Also, Viking malt, the Polish branch, prepares it. The difference is, okay, they are of course similar, but the perception of the smoke is different when you smoke, when you dry the malt using smoke, and when you have a ready wheat malt and smoke it at the end, because it doesn't get so much deep into the grain. Okay, Simona, we are not using isinglass. I mentioned it a few slides before. It is not needed to clarify the beer anymore. So we said that we don't do it. Also because a lot of people on vegan diet asked us about let's say the safeness of the beer for them. Eric, it's not even the less smoke aroma. For me, it's slightly let's say different notes, because even if the malt is delicately smoky, but smoked through the grain because it was dried with smoke, it's slightly less aggressive, less drying, and the nature of the smoke is like only slight amount of campfire, something like that, and using malt smoked at the end usually gets you more of those aggressive notes.
So I would say it's a completely different smokiness. I mean, the smokiness from Bruntal is more like higher, and the smokiness. It's a completely different process because Bruntal is a traditional maltery, so they smoke by the fire, and the Weiermann is, I would say, in brackets, more modern.
Okay, we had something.
So what about Angelo? What about Polish homebrewers version of other grains too with smoked wheat? I mean, the original recipe is 100% smoked wheat malt, and we recommend to use only this. But I know that in many regions there is a problem with 100% smoked wheat malt. There are some tricks how to achieve it without this. I mean, probably Marcin will know more about it, but I know that you can brew a good Grodziskie without a dedicated malt, right?
Yes. And also we had a question about the yeast blend. The issue is now it's not commercially available. In Grodzisk, we use yeast propagated from one of the old bottles and stored in a lab near Łódź. So when we started brewing, we just propagated the yeast from stored in the bank. And one thing which is great about this yeast or blend, because now you can hardly decide, hardly check what's inside. They are very strong, very high percentage of living cells after each batch. And since the restart of the brewery in 2015, we still used the same culture. So it didn't need any propagation from the start since then. So now it's like 150 passages of the same culture. And they do not mutate. They even fermented some stronger beers, because a few years ago we had some releases of a hybrid between Grodziskie beer and Baltic Porter. So they did not change in any way their metabolism while fermenting, igniting plateau. So they are very, very strong, versatile, and still maintain the clean profile even if they ferment stronger beers. But the issue is that we, from time to time, when someone is around, allow homebrewers to take some of the slurry from the brewery. We even tried to do it a couple of times for smaller Polish craft brewers, but still the issue is that the risk is upon the brewery that receives the yeast, because there is also additional risk while moving the culture, transferring from vessel to vessel outside the brewery. So let's say we are open for that, especially for smaller brewers, but still we cannot be sure that everything is okay when you take them. But of course, all the homebrewers can. Okay, we do not send them, of course, because it's also risky, especially when they start fermenting again in closed vessel during transport. But still, if you are in Poland and are near, it's available. And the strain from the market, which is closest, let's say, quite good strain used by a lot of homebrewers is USO5 from Fermentis. But also, of course, depending on conditions of the fermentation, some of the Polish homebrewers choose S33 also from Fermentis as a quite good replacement. But still, S33 do not go such deep, so you have to modify the mashing schema to get desired amount of alcohol. Yeah, there is also a strain from Fermentum Mobile. I didn't test it by myself, but at least they state that that the source of the strain is the same, so probably it's also a good replacement. Yes. Schaupie fused isinglass. That was the most conservative approach to the beer ever made, probably after the rebuild of the brewery.
Any other questions, guys?
Yeah. We still have some time.
Yes, please. If you've got any questions, please put them in the chat window. Thanks very much, Marcin and Dawid. It was fascinating style. One question for me verbally. You mentioned it's bottle conditioned. Are there any other formats that the beer is available? I mean, I had it in cans at the EBCU event we had in Dublin in Ireland, and that was an experience. But I wondered, is it available in any other containers or formats?
As for now, let's say it's very rare to see some in kegs, but some of the brewers, even us, especially with the recipes made from homebrewers recipes, so that winners of the homebrewing competition, let's say that not all of them are suitable to make them the proper way, so with re-fermentation, bottle conditioning, and so on. So last year, when the one with the smoked pear won, because we knew from the homebrewers, from the authors of the recipe, that even when they use some hot water to sterilize the fruit, from time to time, the batches that they made at home went moldy. So we decided that after the addition of the pear and after maturation with it, we will stop the process by pasteurizing and bottling after forced carbonation. So this one was also in kegs, yes, but still it's quite rare because the stability of the beer, of course, in the keg, even though it's smoky and it should be quite preserved, it's harder than pasteurized beer. Question from Piotr about the strangest specialty Grodziskie. Well, it could be a long list, but we even had smoked herring in the beer. It was quite oily on the top layer of the liquid, but still it was interesting.
Yeah, it was. The next question is about why Polish drinkers don't care too much of Grodziskie, but do of Baltic porters. Too much light? I wouldn't say so. I mean, this year has changed the perception of Grodziskie quite heavily, because we've got like 30 something Grodziskie on the market, and it started to sell quite good, as for the style, of course. And this style is, I would say, is like you hate it or you love it. So there is nothing much in the middle. Because smokiness sometimes is disturbing, but it should be very lightly smoked. I mean, it's the malt is dried by the smoke, not smoked. And it's also very drinkable, very, very fizzy, very should be hoppy, dry, very refreshing. So the people started to treat this style as a perfect drink for the summer hot weather, and it's changing. It used to be that it was much more popular outside Poland and less popular in Poland, but I think 1 to 3 years ago it started to be like a hot thing in Poland, and the people started to love it because there are a lot of varieties and a lot of different variation on the beer. For instance, the last batch of the Trzech Kumpli Grodziskie with grilled lemon and red pepper was so good, drinkable, that it has changed the approach of the market to Grodziskie, and those variations are said to be a kind of thing in the middle towards standard Grodziskie.
Yeah, some kind of an introduction to the style, yeah. And as Michael on the chat mentioned, there were even Grodziskie only released in kegs. One thing which is quite important, that because of being such great first quencher, Grodziskie is also a great style for pubs. Yeah, if it's available in kegs, it sells quite quickly, especially in the summer. So maybe that will be the reason to have more Grodziskies in kegs in the following years.
There's a question from Tom Carroll, Marcin.
Tom Carroll? Oh yeah, about beer brewed champagne method, yeah? I do not recall, let's say, the precise beer brewed method, but definitely we had in the competition some Grodziskies just fermented with champagne yeast, yes? But not according to the method with all the process like in champagne, but the strain, the champagne strain was used as a main strain for fermentation. And the effects were quite interesting, as I recall them, because, you know, during those years, probably over 100 of different approaches to Grodziskie, not even executions, but totally different ideas, is what we saw during the competition.
And Keld asks about food pairing.
Yeah, we've got with us a specialist on food pairing, who is Michał Kopik.
Yeah, Michael is on the chat. He even made some food pairing in Mexico.
So he can tell us more about this, but as he said on the chat, probably Grodziskie is good for everything. It's not very aggressive beer.
Okay, so I don't know if there's any more questions, please ask. Otherwise, we'll finish off. But I wanted to thank Marcin and Dawid. It was a fascinating presentation, a very ethnic style, and I was really pleased to manage to try the beer. The one that we had in the can was one of the ones you mentioned, Marcin. It was on the slide, the one with the red label.
This one, maybe?
Yeah. And I think so,
beer.
Yeah,
it's not can conditioned, but it's still a good beer. A bit more smoke, yes, for the style. But on the other hand, balanced with the hoppiness, so bitterness. So a good beer.
And Derek's asked, is it difficult to keep in keg like other wheat beers?
It's slightly different than the problems with the wheat beers, since it should be perfectly clear. So not all the issues of wheat beers are impacting the keg Grodziskie, but still there is a problem with one is giving the beer a proper carbonation, and the other one is because of low ABV, especially when you have not one-way kegs but metal kegs. If the keg is not perfectly maintained, not perfectly washed, it's of course easier to get infection of the beer because of light ABV.
Yeah, and Lana made a comment sorry. Lana made a comment about the fact that it's with a hot summer, it's an ideal drink for a very hot summer.
Oh yeah, of course. It's a great beer for summer, and Lana tried it in the hot summer after the Grodziskie competition, so we were happy to have her in Grodzisk to present the style. Let's say that let's hope that Lana was not the last foreign judge to visit our competition and judge our beers just to promote the style outside Poland. We will do something about it next year.
And of course, we invite you to Grodziskie Piwobranie, which is the festival dedicated to the Grodzisk brewer and Grodziskie beer. And it's always the end of June in Grodzisk. And of course, to send the beers to the homebrew competition.
Nicholas asks about the oxidation. Luckily, it's this fault is not so easy to get in Grodziskie because of the protective influence of the smoke. So one good thing about the Grodziskie is that when it ages for a very long period of time, it still gets better if it's not infected. So the smoke preserves the beer very well, and it's not getting like aggressively oxidized even for a few years after bottling, especially of course the bottle conditioned ones.
Okay, so I think Tom has offered to be a volunteer at the next to be a judge at the next Grodziskie event.
I will get back to you when I will search for judges for next year for sure.
Okay, well, I think we'll finish there. I just want to thank you both for you know, for the presentation, and also for Magda for making it all happen. I know Magda's in another part of the world, and it's very late for her, so I think she's in Azerbaijan. So thank you, Magda, if you can hear us. I'm sure you can. And maybe everyone could unmute and put their hands together for our two presenters. Thanks. Okay, well, a fantastic evening. To finish off with, I'd like to invite everyone to have a look at the EBCU website. I've put 2 links on there for the next workshop. We're going to have some more coming up in the new year. But the next official one, I'm not saying it's the next one, there'll probably be one before that, is called Challenges to the Brewing Industry from Climate Change. And that'll be Tim Webb. So please do sign up for that. And thank you very much for coming tonight. Thank you again to Marcin and Dawid. It's been a fantastic presentation, and enjoy your Grodziskie. Cheers all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.